Hello class, and welcome to your ECS Module 4 or Week 4 assignment for Earned Value. This is going to be a Microsoft Project assignment that's blended in with a Word document. So we're going to use Microsoft Project to create that Earned Value data. We're going to let it auto-calculate for you information, and then we're going to transpose that information out to answer some questions in a Word document that is going to kind of pull at your structure for how you created the whole project flow up to this point. So let's jump in and start to take a peek at what this assignment looks like. Now there's a couple different components to it, but you need to understand that basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to get you to create project information for yourself on the current project that you have in that Microsoft file that you cost and resource loaded from the previous assignment. So as you saw, the work breakdown structure was kind of decomposed out of the scope statement. This is going to be decomposed out of that previous cost and resource data that you loaded into the Microsoft file. So your Microsoft project file at this point has got all of the information in it for cost, resources. You've got predecessor information in there for successor and predecessor logics. Everything is linked, and at this point your last assignment was to go ahead and create the baseline. So you're starting with a baseline project, and now we're going to start to pull, I'll call it earned value data. The earned value management system is going to give us the opportunity to pull data out. So one of the first things you're going to need to do is you're going to need to understand a couple of the sample project Microsoft MPPs that I've put out there for you. So let's go ahead and jump into the first one. I want you to understand what I've loaded out here for you. So there's two sample documents over here. The first one is going to be this one. This file is going to be something that you can look at to really understand what earned value is already out there for another project or another program. So you can see I'm pulling at the columns, and you can see that we get down to resource names, we get down to baseline. Let me just move my picture out of the way here a little so you can actually see what's over here. Let me get back to this. From a baseline standpoint, we've kind of laid out for you what this looks like. So you can see that in this particular file, it's been baselined, and this is what the baseline cost was for all of the tasks and the subtasks in the project. So this is what the project costs, $147,160. It's 100% complete. You will need to go into your file and you will need to make it 100% complete for all the tasks and subtasks. You want to make sure that you accomplish that. Once you do that 100% complete, it will then give you the opportunity to see what your project looks like from a cost standpoint. It'll also tell you roughly how many days it took from a duration perspective. Now, you see that I've pulled back under Add New Column. What you can do here now is you can go back and you can start to look at some of those actual, I'll call it areas that you need to understand. CPI, SPI, ACWP, work, the percent of work completed. All of those are loaded in here, and all you have to do is pick which of these columns that you want. So if you want to look at, say, let's just take an example of BCWP. So let's click on BCWP. It gives me BCWP. If I go to another column and tell it I want to know what the ACWP, the actual cost of work performed, was. So there's the difference between those two. You can see that it's simply a matter of clicking in which column you want to add. You can get any of the data that you're looking for just simply by finding it listed here. Let's just go down and we're going to grab another one. I want to just grab another one for you. So if you want to know what the CPI on this particular project was, this is what the CPI for different elements are. If you wanted to know what the CPI or the SPI was, let's go ahead and just pull this over, and we're going to look at the schedule index. So schedule of work performed index. So let's go find SPI. So once we find SPI, we can put that in there. That gives us what the SPI level was. And remember, an indication of 1.0 and higher in a certain situation for one of these is better. Under Anything under 1.0 is better for one of the others. So you need to remember from an SPI and a CPI performance index, what is better for you at a 1.0 or higher range, and what is better for you at a 1.0 and a lower range in another value. So let's go ahead and close this file. This is the A tutorial, and what I want you to do is I want you to see what the other file that we've got for you looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the A2 file, and this is one that we've gone ahead in and we've created the earned value reports. So that's another piece of this particular area is going to be that you want to run the reports, and the reports from an earned value standpoint, go in and create the view for it, create this view, and it gives you the numbers that you're looking for also in a graphical standpoint. Now, you're going to see a huge spike here, and that's because we've kind of forced the whole project to close very rapidly. Over time, if you were running a regular project, you would see that these would kind of, they would gradually get to the point where you're selling a project off or closing it from a cost or schedule variance perspective. But run the earned value report to get the earned value data. And the reason that you need that data and you need that report is that we are going to have a template for you that you need to fill out. So for this week, you're responsible, your team is responsible for filling out the information for us on the project budget, the resource management, and the project baseline in a Word document. So I want you to click on this assignment template. It's going to drive you to a Word document. This is the ECS PMO's document that we've sent you, and we want you to give us information. And that information is going to be, explain your approach estimating project costs. Did you do top down? Did you do bottoms up? How did you estimate your costs? This starts to look at the methodology that your team used and why you used it. And remember, there's no such thing as a right or wrong answer here. We just need to understand how you created that information for yourself. And then we want you to create a table, in essence, that shows what you had from a budget standpoint. So go back to the charter, and you understand from a charter perspective, how much did you have laid out for yourself in labor? What was the budget for yourself in labor? And then take a peek at what the actuals were coming out of that MPP file. So we want actuals for labor, materials, contract, equipment, and any travel costs that you may have projected up front and what the actuals were. Then we want you to compare the budget from the charter to the final budget and explain any variances. And there will be variances. Your original budget did not cover anything that was out of scope, out of cost, and you've had scope creep, scope growth that we forced you to have in that data management system. In some of the instances for what happened with you with the mega driver in the testing scenarios. Okay, so depending on your philosophy, depending on your team strategy, you may have procured pieces up front to try to eliminate some of the issues you were going to run into in the back end. You may have been successful, you may not have been successful, but we wanted you to give us information on your contingency planning. How did you budget for contingency? And remember, contingency is different than project reserve. So project reserve, management reserve, these are different philosophies. We want you to explain to us how you handled that. We also want you to give us information on the resource management perspective. Did you resource load your schedule to the point where it was, it was full enough to be able to get things done, or did you over allocate or under allocate? How did you fix any allocation problems? So you may find that you had to smooth the project. And by smoothing the project, that means that you're taking the resources that you've loaded and you're force fitting them, and you're taking the end of the schedule, and it could move the delivery date out. That's a natural artifact that happens when we have to take a project and we have to take a limited number of resources and get them to fit within that time period that we've got. In addition to that, we've got the project baseline. We want you to give us data from your MS project file. So we're looking for that snapshot for what was the planned value, the earned value, the ACWP, the schedule variance, the cost variance, EAC, BAC, which is budget at complete, and VAC, the variance at completion. That's going to come out of those snapshots, those views that we create, or you can create it in the Microsoft project file itself by creating a column for it and then being able to calculate that data. Now, once you're done with that, there's 3 pieces to this. So you can see that we've got all 3 of these components laid out here. Your grading rubric gives you points assigned to Part 1, 15 points associated for that information on the project budget. Part 2, 15 points on resource management. Part 3, 15 points on the project baseline. Questions in the data. So remember that this is another week where you've got a lot of pieces that you can hand off to other people. Have other people create views. Have other people calculate the data. Make sure that you're getting information from everyone. You're working in a collaborative environment. You're going to really start to understand the nuances of Microsoft Project when we get to the point where we take the baseline that we created last week, or not last week, but in the last module, and we force an artificial closure of the project, and we're forcing that baseline to get a snapshot. And now what we're doing is we're looking at the cost and resource information from an earned value perspective, just for the opportunity for us to reflect on how did we create that strategy for cost? How did we build those? Did we build it top down, bottoms up? How did we calculate our costs? Things like that. The same thing with determining durations for schedule. So all that philosophy is what's going to come out in this particular module. It gives us an opportunity to take a snapshot of a project that you've been working on and articulating up to this point, and it gives us the ability to look at it and measure it from an earned value perspective. And that's what we're trying to do for this particular module. Okay? If you've run into any problems, once again, YouTube has got a tremendous number of videos available for you on calculating earned value, how to do that. So if you run into any issues, that's a quick and simple way to get some information. Don't forget the Microsoft resources that you have available for you from the software. There's a help window in there. It drives you into explanations as to how to calculate some of this. And as always, you can contact me via my cell phone, hit me with email, jump into the Zoom meetings that we have on Wednesday, and if you need to get information from me there, that's another opportunity available for us, okay? This is going to finish off week 4, which is exciting for you because the next week we're going to drive this information into how do we control the project. You're going to start looking at things from a risk perspective and from a communications perspective. So I'm excited that we're getting to the point where you're finishing up the Microsoft project portion of this and moving into a couple other, I'll call it really important legs before we're going to finally close the project down in Module 6. But congratulations, this is another assignment that you're going to have under your hat here. And like I said, the Microsoft project skill sets, these are critical for any project manager. You want to make sure that you really understand how to at least get to the point where you can do what I'll call poor man's earned value, which is what we're doing here in this Microsoft project perspective. Okay? Have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.